What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Run It Up podcast. I'm your host, Najee Adams. You know I got my guy with me today, Khalil Baker. How you doing,
Hello.
bro?
I'm doing all right, man. It's been a weird few weeks. Tired, busy, not busy. I don't know. It's been weird, but I'm good though. Just hanging
Chilling.
out, chilling. How you doing?
I feel it. I'm doing good, bro. We are supposed to get Justice on the pod. My boy cannot come on, but he did say text for text, 100%. He texted the words 100%. He will be back next week. So I don't know if we I might have to hold him to it. We'll see. Maybe the three of us could actually get on the pod together. I don't
One
know.
of these
Who knows?
days, man.
One
One
of
of
these
these days.
days, you feel me? One of these days. But yeah, before we get into everything, basically this episode is going to be a just NFL offseason talk. We're gonna go a lot of stuff has transpired in the NFL since the last time since the Super Bowl, basically, which was what, a month and a half ago. A lot of stuff has changed in the NFL. So we're basically gonna go over all the big moves of the offseason so far, pre-draft. But before we do, make sure you guys subscribe to Run It Up Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere you listen to podcasts, we should be there. Leave a rating and review. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Comment, like, do all that good shit. If you're listening or you're watching on YouTube, follow us on TikTok at the Run It Up Podcast and follow us on Twitter at Run It Up Pod. You can find me on Twitter at Najee Adams _ Khalil on Twitter at Belil44 and Justice on Twitter at JReed _ everything I just said will be in the description down below. So you could just go down there and look rather than trying to listen to what the fuck I'm saying. So yeah, before we get into it, song of the week. Khalil, start us off, bro. What have you been listening to this week?
I've been listening to a wide range of things. By the way, real quick, since we're on music, to start off, Future and Metro, they released tonight. Can't wait.
They
This
do.
is gonna be like
They do.
this is potential album of the year type stuff. I'm seriously looking forward to it. Just want to
Are
mention
you a
that.
future
Anyways,
guy?
sometimes I used to be like heavy, like a lot, and then I think I got out of it. But now I just listen to them mostly when I feel like working out and
Mm.
kind of need a little juice or something. I listen to that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Metro album a lot though.
Am I
Last year,
dreaming? Is it? Oh, Am I
yeah, I
dreaming
think,
is a great song.
dude, it landed in my top five for Spotify Wrapped. I was like, I didn't even think I listened to it that much, but it was in my,
Wow, it's
I think
so
it's
good.
my third one. It was so weird. But my song of the week is going to be something completely different than that genre I just mentioned. I am going to do Get Him Back by Olivia Rodrigo.
Oh, Olivia Rodrigo. I know the artist, but I've never was put on. I feel like I've definitely heard her music because she's
Yeah,
massive, but
two
never put
albums,
on a song of her.
and they're both like phenomenal. Like she's super young, so like it's crazy. Great songwriting, great voice. Like she's really good, especially to be so young in the game. But you got Sour as a first one, and I think Guts is the second one.
Bet. So you guys will see that in the description down below. Olivia Rodrigo. What's it called?
Get Him Back.
Get Him Back by Olivia Rodrigo. Boom. In the description down below. It got me saying crazy phrases in the description down below. Mine's is by Wolf-Face Joey. I believe he is a New York artist. It is Wolf-Face Joey, and I'm between two songs right now, but my song of the week will be "Don't Be Dishonest" by Wolf-Face Joey. So
All
go
right.
check it out. Little New York artist, a little get a little New York love on the pod. Feel me? And so yeah, now we can just go ahead and dive into all the off-season stuff. So basically, I wrote down all of the noteworthy off-season stuff. Like I don't have any alignment on here. I don't have a ton of defensive players on here either, but like all the big offensive splashes, I at least want to touch on. So in no particular order, I guess we can just start with Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, the Atlanta Falcons' new quarterback. He signed a 4-year, $180 million deal. $100 million of it is guaranteed. And when you look at the landscape of like how that compares to other QBs in the league, 8 quarterbacks have $200 million plus deals. Mahomes, Burrow, Herbert, Lamar, Josh Allen, Hurts, Kyler, and Deshaun. And then Kirk is right under them. So, he's right on that. threshold of like top 10 paid QB. He's the ninth highest total salary among QBs, seventh highest per year, same amount of guaranteed money as Derek Carr, a little less than Daniel Jones, but more than Baker and Geno. So that's kind of where the Falcons valued him, and I think he was okay with that, especially being 36 years old, coming off a torn Achilles. But what do you think of the Falcons landed Kirk Cousins?
I think there's a few different ways you can attack it and look at it. First thing comes off the bat is Kirk Cousins is one of the best bag chasers there is
He's the
that
greatest
we've
bag
ever
getter
seen, man.
I've ever seen. So
It's insane. Uh, Great agent, obviously. I don't remember their name, but obviously Kirk Cousins does a great job getting that
he has
contract.
a higher career earning than Tom Brady.
It's crazy, bro.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. But I mean, and also Kirk Cousins is not taking a discount. We've seen that.
He also not winning rings, so
That's true. Hey, you like what you like. It's all right.
Yeah.
You can make sacrifices or you can't. But I think it's a huge grab for the Atlanta Falcons. We saw what that team looked like last season. QB play. Even Raheem Morris talked about it in one of his pressers about he wouldn't even be in this spot if the Falcons had better QB play, which is a crazy quote, but it's super accurate. Really funny. I just think that they struggled a lot when you look at, the QB play there, whether it's Desmond Ridder, who wasn't very good, not very consistent, really couldn't come up in those big moments, especially in the fourth quarter. A lot of turnover-worthy plays, just boneheaded plays, and then Taylor Heineke, who I actually like a lot, just really wasn't able to be consistent himself that way. But I really liked Taylor Heineke before that point. But Kirk Cousins bringing him in is a huge move for them. It brings you consistent QB play. Of course, there's a lot of risk when it comes to it because he is coming off a pretty big injury. To be 36 years old, like I think you said, to be that old as well, and you're locking him in for what 4 or 5 years at that point. So there's a lot of risk that comes with that, of course. But I think Kirk Cousins really does raise the ceiling of that team. I think you're getting a QB who is consistent from the pocket, who showed a lot more in the past couple of seasons as far as just being able to actually extend plays, maybe be off schedule a little bit. He can throw from a muddy pocket. He can make all the throws that you need. He is super accurate. I think Kirk Cousins is exactly what they needed. Now, of course, bringing him in and making some other moves like they did, I think you can go some other places in the draft and really shore up a few things on that defense. But I think Kirk Cousins is a great move. And then on the other side of it, you have the Minnesota Vikings, who is completely okay, I guess, with getting rid of Kirk Cousins, which I think brings some cause for concern at that point. I think the team had a lot of bright moments on that team last year. I think Brian Flores is a huge grab for them as their second-year defensive coordinator coming up, and I think they're gonna really shore up a few things on that side of the ball, bringing in Jonathan Greenard, I believe too, and then it'll just be interesting to see how they attack a few things. They brought in Sam Darnold in free agency for the QB spot. It's looking like all signs to it that they're going to bring in a QB during the draft, trading up for another first round pick it that way. But I see why they wouldn't bring in a Kirk Cousins for an extension that long, maybe, if that's what the motive was behind not being as aggressive or maybe matching that or bringing in a better offer than the Falcons did. But it's a huge grab for the Falcons. I see why they did it. He's going to be perfect in that system, and he's going to really elevate that team to where, they have everything else they need for the most part. The offense has a QB going forward for sure.
Yeah, I think for me, starting with the Vikings, I think they're definitely trying to position themselves to either be able to trade up into that, top 5 range to grab a QB. I think they're what, 9, or they're either 9 or 11 right now. Then I think they traded for 24 or something like
Yeah,
that. But
I
they
think they're at 11 and either 23 or 24.
Yeah. So I think they're in position to trade up for another first round pick. I think the Cardinals could be willing to trade back. They have another first. And they are in a weird situation where, like, they have their franchise QB. Their defense does need a lot of work, but there is no premier defensive player to really take in the top 5. So I could see them trading back. I also think they need work at, running back. They need work at receiver. And there is a generational guy at receiver. So I could also see the case for them sitting at 4 and taking Marvin Harrison Jr. But I think the Vikings are really looking at the Falcons to be a trade back candidate. The Chargers too, honestly. I can see Harbaugh being like, yeah, give me those two. Come here. You can go take JJ, take my boy.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think either them, there's been a lot of smoke about the Vikings wanting JJ and the Giants wanting JJ. I think he probably goes top 10 regardless, maybe top 5. But yeah, I think the Vikings had to move on. I think that Justin Jefferson wants to reset the market at wide receiver, and they need all the money that they can muster up to keep him. And so that's kind of where they are putting their resources, and that's cool. For the Falcons, I think that I don't hate the move. Um, I think that Kirk Cousins will unlock a lot of their guys, which is what I think they're looking for, right? Like I don't necessarily, I think they think they're a QB away. I think the NFC, well, they're in the NFC South, right? The NFC South is a very open division for them to take advantage of and really, take a hold of when you look at the teams in that division. And so I see why they would go ahead and make this move to try and become a tier above them. But and not even but, right? Like, let me go back to what I was saying. I think that it unlocks their guys because, Bijan is entering year 2. Kyle Pitts is entering year 4, hasn't had a 700-yard season since his rookie year. Drake London's entering year 3, has yet to go over 1,000 yards. Like, Kirk Cousins will, for the most part, like, I think what you get with Kirk Cousins in an offense, and that, like, he's willing to air it out. He's willing to take what the defense is giving him. He's willing to hyper target a guy if necessary. He's willing to spread it around. Like, I think Kirk Cousins does a good job in, getting everyone involved, but also seeing the guys that are more talented than everyone else on the field and making sure that they're able to show that off. And so that, like, that's where Bijan will thrive. And that's where Drake London and Kyle Pitts will thrive. But I do think that, like, the Falcons aren't necessarily going for a Super Bowl or like long term. Like, I think that they just are cool with being competitive right now. That, like, they were tired of the Desmond Ritters and Taylor Heineke's leading the charge there, and like playing with guys like that in the long run is never going to unlock the guys that they need to be unlocked. Whereas like Kirk Cousins will. Now, if I was the Falcons, and I think I'm biased, whatever, I would rather have traded a 3rd or a 5th for Justin Fields than paid Kirk Cousins, 36 years old, coming off a torn Achilles, $100 million guaranteed, when he has a 1-4 playoff record in 9 years. I don't know. That's just me though. If I was able,
I know we're gonna talk about Fields later at some point. I'm just trying to let you get that comment off.
hey,
There's just so much to say when it comes to that conversation, and I don't think Fields is bad. I don't think he's great.
oh
I'll
yes,
say
I
that.
can already hear it in
I
your
don't think
voice.
he's great.
You're not a believer, man.
I don't think he's bad, but I see the back and forth on why they wouldn't do that. It's just really hard to lock yourself into a QB that old coming off a big injury. But I can also see the drawback to maybe bringing in the Justin Fields in that sense too. But I don't know.
No, I definitely see the drawback, and I think Kirk Cousins' floor is way higher, right? Like, I think what you get with Kirk Cousins. He's going to be able to spread. He's a legitimate passer, right? Like, I think that's where the Justin Fields concerns come in. Like, what if he just never develops as a passer, and then you have Kyle Pitts and Drake London, and you have nothing to do with them? Whereas like Kirk Cousins, his ceiling might be lower, but like, he's going to give you 4,000 passing yards and spread the ball around and get guys going. And so that's where I feel like it's a good move for the Falcons. I don't think it was this massive upgrade for them. I do think it was a massive upgrade relative to what they had at the position before, but I don't think it's going to, upgrade them into like contender status. And I don't necessarily think that they think that it will either. But I definitely think that they'll be competitive, like they'll be way more competitive than they were previous years. So
I don't know. I'm not sure, man. I don't know if you do what you do if you don't think you're gonna be contending or have a shot at it. To be honest with you,
I don't
I don't
know
think she's
that
bringing
I
in Kirk
can look
Cousins.
at a Kirk Cousins 1-4 playoff record in 9 years starting and be like, that's the guy that's gonna win us a chip. I don't know
I mean,
that
yeah,
I
but
can do that.
look at the market. I mean, like what's out there? Like what
The
else is he
QB
gonna
market
do?
was bussing this year. There was a lot of guys moving, but like
A lot
it
of a lot
in
of
terms
a
of
lot of mid. No, it's
in
just a
terms
lot
of
of
in terms of his skill set, no, obviously. Like there's only if he's a top 12, borderline top 10, top 15 safe QB in the league, a lot of those guys aren't moving. So like you
yeah.
can
He was the best QB available.
easily, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So
but
like,
like I don't think that him being the best QB available makes them contenders. And I don't know that they do either. Like a Kirk Cousins. So the way that the contract is set up is that it's like front loaded into the first 2 years and he has a no trade clause. So like by that third year, they could theoretically cut him or try and facilitate some trade to get him up out of there. Now, do you think a 38-year-old Kirk Cousins in the next 2 years is winning them a chip? I don't. I don't think that they think he will either. But I think in the long run, like 2 years with Kirk Cousins will be what makes, Drake London become Drake London, will
I
be what
understand.
makes Kyle Pitts become Kyle Pitts. And like in the long run, that ends up paying off. Sure, we paid Kirk Cousins $100 million, but now we have a 1,400-yard receiver and a generational tight end. So like it ends up working out.
Yeah, but I mean, you also to look at it this way. I mean, like, I know at that point I definitely agree with, but like, if you have anything can happen in the NFL, essentially, I feel like to an extent, the NFC was kind of wide open in a way once we really got to the playoffs. I feel like we saw a 49ers team who struggled in every game they were in, pretty much for the most part in the playoffs. I
Even the
feel like it was
Bucks,
kind of
you look at the Bucks, like that
the
is Kirk
yeah,
Cousins is
like
better than Baker Mayfield. Like, and they
right. So
made the
like
playoffs.
I mean if you have a talented team as it is, your offense is super talented, you can run the ball, you bring in Kirk Cousins who can do whatever you need to in the passing game for the most part, and then you shore up the defense and you really plug in a few holes that they really struggled with. I mean the NFC, I don't know, you can make a run, man. You never know what the landscape of the league is going to look like until you really get to that point. But if you can put yourself in position to actually compete, and they're going to be competitive, like you said, if you can put yourself in position to actually compete, you never know what's going to look like at the end of the year at that point. But if you have a shot, I mean, you have a shot. You just really never know what's going to happen. And
No, I
I
agree. I
think,
definitely think that they've made themselves more competitive. And I think that they believe that they're a QB away from being the premier team in their division.
yeah.
But
So I agree. I can say that I can agree that and understand that you don't agree with that, but or think that they're like contending. But I feel like they can think they are, especially if you're
mm,
making as an aggressive move as you are bringing in Kirk Cousins.
yeah,
Even
no,
at
I think
36 with an Achilles tear, like it's aggressive and it's a big move, and you don't make those moves if you don't think you're gonna be contending. I feel like,
No, I think they think that they'll be good. I think they think they'll be competitive. I think that the way the contract is set up, they're cool with moving on after 2 years, and I don't think that they think they're going to be able to win a Super Bowl in 2 years. But I definitely think that it elevates them, and they will be better than they've been the last decade. Because Kirk Cousins is the best QB they've had since MVP Matt Ryan, so
yeah,
it'll be great. And yeah, that kind of ends the Kirk Cousins talk. The next one I want to talk about, which I really wish Justice was here for, is Brian Burns. And he's one of the only defensive guys I have on here, even though like Danielle Hunter went to the Texans and all that good stuff. But like I think the Brian Burns one was pretty massive. He got traded to the Giants for a second and a fifth. Even though there's reports that the Panthers are offered 2 firsts and a second like a year ago, and they said no. But cool, got traded to the Giants. Giants end up signing him to a 5-year, $141 million deal, 76 million fully guaranteed. It is a hefty deal. Like there's no doubt about it. They paid him a lot of money. It's the second highest total like amount of money for any edge rusher, second most per year as well, only behind Nick Bosa. It's above TJ Watt, above Myles Garrett. TJ Watt does have more guaranteed money than him, no, but by all accounts, they made him a higher paid player than Myles Garrett. So like they believe in Brian Burns. And when I look at like what the Giants are doing this offseason, like I don't hate it. I think that like they went out and got a premier player at a young age at a premier position for a second and a fifth. Cool. Like they kept their first when teams 2 years ago or a year ago were offering multiple firsts for this guy. They were able to get him at a discount because he is coming off of a subpar season by his standards, only 8 sacks and 18 QB hits. But when you look at like the course of his career, he's 12th in sacks and QB hits in the entire NFL since he came into the league in 2019. So like he's one of, you can say, the best 12 to 15 pass rushers in the NFL. They didn't pay Saquon. They did pay Brian Burns. I think when you look at what smart teams do, like they tell us that for the most part, running backs are expendable. When you look at good teams, they build through the trenches on both sides of the ball. And the Giants, I think when you don't find guys capable of getting 10 plus sacks a year often. And when you do, like most of them are locked up around the league and they're on those good teams. So for the Giants to be able to get an elite pass rusher, pay theirs, lock him down, see what he can do with Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence and really just kind of build around that. I think that's I don't blame them for paying him a big amount. I know a lot of people are, kind of scoffing at the deal, but I think it was worth it for them. And then for the Panthers, I'm not even going to talk on the Panthers too much. I want you to talk on the Panthers because I think that they might be the worst run organization in sports right now. I'm going to be honest. Like just absolute, I don't even have a word for it. Just like malpractice, just bad things happening in the Carolina Panthers organization.
Yeah, I mean, it's rough right now. I'll talk a little bit about the Giants real quick. I think they've done, like you said earlier, a really good job so far in free agency. I think they've done some things to increase their floor when it comes to like offensive line, especially too, getting some really good low key signings as well. Brandon and Brian Burns, I believe they were last in pass rush win rate last season, whatever it was, and all you have is Kayvon and you have Lawrence and all those guys. But of course, like bringing in Brian Burns is only going to increase, you know, your potential for success in that way. So I mean, maybe he's not an elite, pass rusher, but you bring him in with a Kayvon and that defensive line that's tough. I think he's going to be very successful for them. And $49 million guaranteed, was it, 2-year deal? Like, I mean, that's going to be just fine as far as the long run. And you don't give up a whole bunch, and you can really, help yourself in the short term as well too. And they bring in Devin Singletary. I think he was fine. He's really good last season for the Texans. And then bring in Drew Lock, another QB option. You lost Drew Lock. I'm so sorry. I'm sure you're very upset with that as a Seahawks
Go
fan.
take Daniel Jones' job, my boy. Go take
But
Danny Dimes' job.
But yeah, I think for when it comes to the Panthers and their side of things, like they are in one of the roughest spots I feel like we've seen. When it comes to a franchise, it's been year after year of just really making a lot of mistakes, building on those mistakes. I think they've done kind of a good job so far when it comes to other sides of it. Of course, you dropped the ball when you could have maybe had 2 first-round picks when it comes to trading off of Brian Burns. So maybe not dealing with that move as well as they could have when they probably should have. And I think you really, shoot yourself in the foot when it comes to that part. So getting a second-round pick, that's great. I think it comes down to really capitalizing on those picks, which they also haven't always done a great job of. Letting guys walk that they have drafted. Or not being able to develop those guys and really utilize those guys the way they should have. But when it comes to their free agency signings, man, I mean, going with the offensive line, you got a Robert Hunt, bringing him in over from Miami, which is really big, and he's going to be a really good guard for them. Getting a Damian Lewis in as well. I feel like even then bringing a Deontay Johnson, like it's huge. Like I think you're going all in on maybe trying to run the ball a little bit more, but also protect your guy with a Bryce Young that you invested so much in last season in the draft.
Gave him
Getting
Caleb
him,
Williams, basically.
yeah, basically, man. So you're giving him a receiver that can separate with the best of them, and then giving him some guys on the offensive line who can really shore up that interior. And then honestly, you just need some development out of your left tackle at that point. So I think they're in a I won't say much better, but somewhat of a better spot than they have been before. I think they're hopefully trying to do things the right way. I like who they brought in as for their head coach over from the Buccaneers, Canales, right?
Yeah,
Trying to
that's
say it the
their
right way.
coach.
I'm tripping today.
Former
But
Seahawks QB coach, baby.
yeah, but I mean, but even then, they've lost some guys in free agency. Frankie Louvu, who is huge for them as well. I know they traded Dante Jackson, but there were reports of them probably going to cut him anyways. You get rid of Brian Burns, so they've lost a bit too. But I think they're in a better spot, probably the best spot they could be in right now, given the circumstances. I'll say that for sure, because it wasn't pretty before these trades and these free agency signings. I'll say that.
Yeah. No, I think for me, the Panthers, I like the Deontay Johnson move a lot. I think it's specifically for Bryce Young, uh, getting a wide receiver like Deontay Johnson that is just open all the time on the field and knows how to get open and knows how to create separation that can, kind of make things a little bit easier on Bryce Young, who had a really rough rookie year and whose confidence was shot by the end of the year. And so like to get some of that back into him and feel like again, like I am the number one pick in the draft. Like to have that, back and get that back for him, I think is big. And I think Deontay Johnson will go a long way towards that. He already developed this rapport with Adam Thielen. When it comes to wide receiver 3, good luck. But they have draft picks in a loaded wide receiver class. Maybe they get a guy. I think Jonathan Mingo is donezo. But we'll see. And
it feels like they're doing everything they can to
yeah,
give
right.
him a chance to be successful. Given the circumstances, they haven't done things great at all in the past few years. But right now, with everything they have, it feels like they're doing everything they can to help him be successful, at least on the offensive side. Now, of course, like we talked about with the head coach, I think what we've seen from him with whether it be a Geno Smith or a Baker Mayfield, we've actually really seen him put his QBs in successful spots, do what they like the best, what they like the most, what makes them most comfortable, what they thrive in. So, that makes me feel a little bit better about the position he's going to be in. And then you do what you did on the offensive line. Like, I feel a little bit better about Bryce Young, and I don't think he's bad. Do you think he's bad?
I mean, I've been quoted as calling him generational. So I would like to go back
I
and
forgot.
scratch that from the
You
record.
can't do. You got to stand on it. You can't do that.
No, I can't stand on that. I'm sorry. I will say for when I said that, I was not watching college football. I was purely going off what people were saying. And I would never do that again in my life. But yeah, do I think Bryce Young is bad? And so me and Khalil were talking about this before the pod that like I've really been getting into a lot of draft content and like looking at, like historical thresholds for certain positions and how they match up moving forward for like how they're indicative or predictive of how the rest of a player's career is going to go. And it doesn't look great for Bryce. I'll be honest. I can't remember exactly what stat it is, but there was this stat that like QBs that every QB that has gotten below this certain threshold has not really panned out. But like I think that what stat like those kind of stats lack are, like situational context. And so
Yeah.
like that's a big thing for me in the Justin Fields thing. And that like everyone he has these predictive numbers that say that like, oh, he's gonna be a bust. But like that doesn't take into account the situation that the Bears put him in. And so I think that when you can also apply that to Bryce Young in that like the Panthers were a dumpster fire last year. Like they were an absolute dumpster fire last year. And so like you put anyone in that situation, like I think if you put CJ, you swap it and you put CJ on the Panthers and Bryce on the Texans, on a Texans team that has Nico Collins, who I will say was really nobody before this year. I was looking at his stats too, because I went down this whole rabbit hole of like, is JSN bad? And I ended up at Nico Collins, whatever. And like he was really nobody before this year, and CJ Stroud turned him into a 1,400-yard receiver. And Tank Dell was a really good analytical profile coming out of college. I think if you swap them, you send CJ to Carolina. I don't think he's the quarterback he is right now. I'm sorry. I don't think that he makes Jonathan Mingo and Adam Thielen and Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard and Terrence Marshall, this elite offense that the Texans were. Now, if you swap it and Bryce on the Texans, I don't think they have as much success as they did with CJ. But like the Texans organizationally are just so much better currently than the Panthers are.
Which is crazy to say. It wasn't like that before.
It wasn't like that.
It wasn't
like that.
It was pretty close to where we were with the Panthers, I feel like, as far as like what are they doing as an organization? What have they been doing? I don't know.
But when you have a
Um,
culture changer like D'Amico Ryans coming there, like I think things do change pretty quickly. And so yeah, I think situation has to be taken into account a lot of the time. And for Bryce, he was in a horrible situation. I'm not saying that Bryce Young is more talented than CJ Stroud because I don't think that he is. I think CJ would be successful on whatever team he went to. But I'm just saying, I think when you put Bryce in a situation like that, it's harder to succeed. And so, do I think he's bad? No. I think this year will be make or break for him one way or another. In that, like, if he looks mid, I think, he'll get 2 more years started maybe and then be a backup. But if he looks really good or has flashes of like, oh, this is the guy that we picked number one overall, then I think that he'll have a nice long career. And if on the flip end, if he looks bad, it's over.
yeah,
But like, and I think that just is what it is. But like, I've watched Josh Rosen and guys like that who I actually think are bad. And I don't see Bryce like I don't think Bryce is that bad. And so
yeah.
like I think there's still a ways for him to go, but I think he can get there.
We didn't talk about draft rankings last year. Unfortunately, I was so sad about it actually. But I had Bryce at 3 in my QB rankings. I never got to talk about it.
It was
Yeah,
1 and 2 for you, AR and
AR was 1 and CJ
Seahawk.
Stroud was
He
2.
was a Seahawk, yeah.
Yeah. I did think Bryce's film was the cleanest, I think. Um, but I just had size concerns, arm strength concerns. Um, I think it was mostly size concerns, just how that would translate and just not being as talented, not higher upside, all that stuff, all that normal stuff. But I liked his film for sure. Um, Bryce, going back to your point, man, I think he's gonna be fine. I even made a trade for him in fantasy because I felt really good about what the Panthers were doing. Um, in a sense, and I
I
won't
will
say
say
really, I
I regret
won't say really.
our trade now. That I wasn't because we're
Oh,
not in a super flex league. We're not in a super flex league, and I had the 106, and I my
yeah.
running backs are horrible. And so I'm looking at the super flex league, and I'm like, okay, it's gonna go Caleb, Jaden, Rome, Neighbors, MHJ. And that's five. That's the top five. And my quarterback is CJ Stroud. So I don't need May. And so I'm sitting here and I'm like, this is useless to me. And then I fell in love with Troy Franklin, but it was too late. So
You might.
now
Oh, you don't have a first at all anymore, right?
no, Khalil. I
Yeah.
don't have a first. I have Tajay Spears.
Yeah. That and okay, to for people listening, that was before the Titans brought in Tony Pollard. You
Mhm.
traded for Tajay Spears and you gave me the 106 pick. So, well, first round 6 pick. So, thank you. I appreciate it.
Listen, man, I thought that I didn't think I was Tony Pollard even rumored to go to the Titans. All of a
No, no,
sudden,
no,
that's what I'm
no.
saying. Like,
It's like one of the first signings of the free agency, I feel like.
yeah,
So, I had no idea it was gonna happen.
they kept it
Whatever.
close.
Yeah,
That's
they kept
actually
a
a great
lot.
segue. That's actually a great
Yeah, it
segue
is.
because my next little free agent talk was about the Titans. I want to give you the runway to just, take off. So their two biggest signings, I think you guys also signed a center, right? But you guys'
Yeah.
two biggest signings are Calvin Ridley and Tony Pollard. Calvin Ridley's a 4-year, $92 million deal. 50 mil of that is guaranteed. Pollard is 3 years, 24 million, 10 mil of it is guaranteed. It makes Tony Pollard the 10th highest paid running back per year. Ridley, on the other hand, he is 30 years old. He is the sixth highest paid wide receiver in the NFL now, 10th highest paid per year, and third most guaranteed money of any wide receiver in the NFL, only behind Stephon Diggs and Tyreek Hill. So talk to me, Cole. This is your time. This is their big offseason. These are the two premier guys they brought in. How you feel about it?
My favorite signing was actually the center signing, by the way. Lloyd Cushenberry over from the Denver Broncos.
There we go.
He talked about coming over because of Bill Callahan, Brian Callahan's father, being the coach and hearing all these good things about it. So, like, I feel like getting a coach in like that, whether whoever you're bringing in for offensive lineman, if you have Bill Callahan as your coach, whoever they decide to bring in, I pretty much trust them when it comes to the offensive line at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Lloyd Cushenberry was a great offensive lineman for him last year. Had really good analytical stats backing up for the Denver Broncos. So I feel really good about that signing. Our offensive line sucked last year. It sucked for the last 2 years. Our last center was Aaron Brewer, who is incredibly undersized, super athletic, but just really undersized, even for the center position, which was pretty difficult at a few different points. But going to the other signings you talked about, especially Tony Pollard and Calvin Ridley, I think that Calvin Ridley contract is going to look a lot different once some other guys make their signings and get their
Mhm.
extensions. So it's what did you say the sixth highest paid
It is
receiver?
sixth highest in terms of total value, but he's only 10th highest in terms of like per year money.
Okay, and so I think both of those, I mean, those numbers are going to look a lot different once guys really start getting their extensions and actually start
Justin
to get paid.
Jamar, DJ Moore
Yeah,
has to get paid. Like
bro.
Brandon Ayuk
Brandon
has to get
Brandon
paid.
Ayuk has to get paid. T. Higgins has to get
Yeah,
paid. Like, there's a lot more that has to be done. So, like, I don't feel too bad about the deal. I know he's what 29 years old, if I'm not mistaken. 29 years
30.
old. About to be 30 at some point. He had what 2 years off. Uh, I feel okay about it. He wasn't that bad for Jacksonville last season. I think Jacksonville had a lot of struggles of their own as far as incorporating him into the offense, how to use him. I think Trevor
He got
Lawrence
a thousand
had.
yards.
I mean, yeah, got 1,000 yards. I think Trevor Lawrence struggled last season. Like Jaguars were just a really weird team that didn't meet any of their expectations. So I can't fault him for a lot of that stuff. I think he still was able to be a deep threat down the field. I think he was open a lot of the times. Like how many times did we see Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley just disconnect on a few plays or not be able to connect on a few plays? So I think he will still be able to stretch the field. I think he'll be a still be a dynamic threat for Will Levis, a consistent threat, and give him someone else to rely on just besides DeAndre Hopkins at that point too, who is going to be a really good number two receiver. He's not a number one receiver anymore, but he's going to be a really good number two receiver beside Calvin Ridley. So I feel really good about that signing. I think the way the deal is set up, anyways, more like the Kirk Cousins deal we talked about. After year two, if we want to cut ties in some way, we can really be flexible with that and get out of that deal. So I feel really good about that signing and bringing him in because we needed a receiver like desperately. Even to the point where we're still thinking about getting a receiver if the right one. Okay, I'm still thinking about getting a receiver if the right one's at 7, and then if there's another one in the second round that I think we really like, or even I think we need to trade up. But even if there's one in the third or fourth round that we can still really get, I feel like we would take that just because we still need some
Well, you think
threats
you
and
guys would go wide receiver at 7?
if if neighbors is at 7 and we don't
There's
take
no
him,
shot he's at
I
7.
might. I
If
know
he's
I'm
at
just
7 and you don't take him yet.
right. I might denounce myself from the fan base.
Oh,
Like
yes, yes,
I
yes.
just don't know how you can pass up on the neighbors. Like maybe a Doomsday, but still maybe not though. Like I still probably wouldn't want to. I don't know. Like I would love Joe Alt though if he's there at 7. Like that's I
That's who
mean
I see you
that's
guys getting mocked a lot. That
yeah.
most mocks I think I see Joe Alt to you guys.
Like that's probably your guy for the next 10 years at left tackle or wherever you want to put him. Like that's hard to pass up on. The guy's a mauler and he's huge. And again, being coached under Bill Callahan, that's perfect. But it also talks if the other side of that too is like how much depth there is for the tackle position and receiver position. So like if there's a guy you like later on in the rounds or you want to trade back, I think that's also a conversation that we don't have to talk about right now, but just what's been going through my mind about Titans draft and offseason. And then going to Tony Pollard signing, I was really confused at first and surprised. I did not see this coming, and it seems a little bit redundant when it comes to these two guys being in the backfield together. I think probably Tony Pollard brings more speed once he's back healthy. So I feel like forgetting who he was last season, knowing he came off that really big injury in a year or two, Tony Pollard's going to look a lot different than what he was with the Cowboys last season and how they struggled to really get him going. But I think it's going to be a really fun backfield between Spears and Pollard. I think it's going to be split carries. I have no idea if it's going to be split carries. Uh, so I've grown to actually like the signing a lot more. You're going to need more than one running back at this point. Not everyone's going to be a Christian McCaffrey and not everyone's going to be a Derrick Henry. You're going to need multiple guys to really carry the load sometimes. So I like the signing. I think guys are going to be really. I think it's going to be really difficult for a lot of people to keep up with it. I think Tony Pollard brings you a lot of versatility, whether in the run game, whether in the passing game, and Tajay Spears does the same exact thing that way too. So you're not going to be missing a beat whether one of them's on the field or off the field, whatever that looks like. So I like that signing too. Yeah, I feel really good about what the Titans have done so far. Bringing in Cheeto for cornerback. He came from Cincinnati. Kenneth Murray is going to be an interesting signing. A lot of athletic upside, just hasn't been able to put it together as an inside linebacker. Brought in Joseph Day, another a bigger guy. Hasn't always panned out the way you wanted him to, but he's still been pretty decent. Mason Rudolph, nice backup quarterback. Re-signed our kicker Nick Folk. That's been really good. It was really good for us last season. I like where we're heading. I think the draft is going to be a huge part. There's been a lot of rumors about us bringing in L'Jarius Sneed, trading for him. Don't know. I don't know what that's going to look like or if it'll actually happen. But I like the way we're heading for sure.
No, I also kind of like it for you guys. I think that the Pollard deal is a good deal for him. Like what he's the 10th highest paid running back per year. Like I think Tony Pollard it's reasonable to say he's a top 10 running back, you know. So I don't think like when healthy, I think that's a reasonable deal. I think I can't not hate you. Like I can't talk bad about you guys for like trying to build around Will Levis, right? Like what are you supposed to do? Like there has to be a way to find out if he's the guy. The only thing
You
I
got to
will
go get
say,
a
like,
receiver. You have to go get.
yeah, like you have to get somebody. The only thing that I would say is that like if you were gonna pay Calvin Ridley $92 million, then like you should have just paid AJ Brown $100 million 2 years ago. So
Naj,
like,
what? Do no, Naj, do not be this person. Please don't be that person.
wait,
Because
why not?
that comment is lacking so much context. It's a whole different regime when it comes to management and coaching staff. Like that was John Robinson and Mike Vrabel, mostly actually John Robinson. We saw how pissed off Mike Vrabel was when they decided to trade AJ Brown. At that point, it's completely John Robinson. Like Rand Carthon has nothing to do with that. Brian Callahan has nothing to do with that. Like I know it's stupid. The ownership is the same within a sense, but like I just don't. It's just a whole different regime. Like you just can't put it on them for past mistakes of a different regime.
And so what I would say is that like I am not necessarily putting it on them. I think I'm more so calling out the stupidness of the move then, and like
Yeah,
in retrospect, it's even stupider
it's
now
so bad. It's so
because
bad.
I think AJ Brown is a better receiver than Calvin Ridley, and so like for $8 million more, I think the gap is worth
Yeah,
it there.
I just think the way it's phrased, it's like, well, you might as well just pay. Because I'm sorry, I've just seen this on Twitter. Like everyone has been saying that, like, what the Titans are a terrible organization. Like, why are you paying Calvin Ridley when you could have just paid AJ Brown? And it just, I'm sorry, it triggered me. It triggered me.
Mm-hmm.
So many people have
No,
been
no, no. I
just.
hate when people say stuff about the Seahawks too. I get it.
It's just
I
like,
think that
and I'm in
no,
pain. I'm in
go.
pain. AJ, okay, I miss AJ Brown like every freaking day. All right, like it sucks. It's like one of the worst moves. It like started the complete downfall of our franchise for the next 2 years, or for the last 2 years, I should say. Now, like it started the downfall. Everything just kind of went downhill after trading AJ Brown away. You draft Traylon Burks, and he's been injury prone since then. Our offensive line has been terrible for the next 2 years. Derrick Henry gets hurt at some point. Ryan Tannehill is always hurt. Like I don't know. Like it just we just fired our head coach Mike Vrabel. We fired John Robinson not too long um, after that mistake he made of getting rid of AJ Brown. Like it's just I don't know. It's been rough. I'm sorry. It's been rough.
No, no, you don't have to apologize. I was more so calling out that they should have just kept AJ Brown, regardless of regime. It was dumb
Yeah.
then, it's dumb now. And that's what I was saying.
Yeah, there's some dudes out there like you just got to pay them. Like when it comes down to it, like you just have to pay them. You have to pay those guys that are like top 5 non-negotiable receivers. Your Jeffersons, Jamars, Tyreek Hills, AJ Browns. I say Tyreek Hill, but the Chiefs. All right, unless you got Patrick Mahomes at
Yeah, I
quarterback,
mean that's he's an outlier. So
unless you got Patrick Mahomes, pay your number 1 receiver if they're actually a number 1 receiver.
or like with Stephon Diggs, like unless you have Justin Jefferson, then
Yeah,
you can let
well,
him go.
I mean, at that point, yeah, he was the third, fourth receiver
Yeah,
taken in that draft. That
yeah.
was insane.
But yeah, I like what the Titans are doing, right? Like you have to find out if Will Levis is your guy. They surrounded him with enough talent to try and evaluate him. DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Traylon Burks, who now that we were talking about like analytical profiles, like he had a monster analytical profile coming out of college. And the fact that it hasn't panned out, like I never understood why so many people were like, no, Traylon Burks has to pan out. He has to pan out. But like I now understand because like all of the numbers point to he should be good. And so like
It's
I think the
so it's injuries. I mean, I think injuries have been the biggest part of it for Traylon Burks. I feel like his rookie season, like I think he took some really major leaps. I think there was an Eagles game. We were playing the Eagles, and he got hurt. I think he got a concussion on a deep ball that he actually caught still. And
oh, I
at
remember that. I
yeah,
remember that.
at that moment, it's like, oh, we're about to lose this game. Traylon Burks is gone. Like, what are we gonna do? But I just think he's just been injured coming into every training camp and coming to every season, and has just had nagging injuries. I think he had a knee injury for most of the season last year, so it's just been a struggle for him to be consistent, be on the field, get a rapport, whether it's with a Ryan Tannehill or a Will Levis. So at that point, Will Levis is just always throwing the ball to DeAndre Hopkins, whether he should or not. So.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think you guys are trying. You know, like D Hop, Calvin Ridley, Traylon Burks, Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears, Chiga Conquo. When you're trying to buff your O line, like I think this is like I kind of talked about for Bryce. Will Levis's rookie stats don't necessarily predict that he's going to have a great season, but like I think that's another a situation where context is important. And so like this season will be important towards going to see whether or not he's going to be able to stay as a average to high level NFL starter moving forward. The last thing about the Titans is something that stood out to me and what you said is that like you envision it as DeAndre Hopkins being the wide receiver too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a hot take because I think most people envision it as D Hop being the one and Calvin Ridley being the two.
Why is that?
Because I think most people just think that D Hop is more talented and like serves the role of an X better than Calvin Ridley does.
I just don't think he has the juice anymore to be a really
Mm.
consistent number one receiver. Like I know he had some really big plays, um, for the Titans last season. He was Levis's most consistent receiver, but I think where he is in another year now at this point, but where he's going to be, this next season, I just don't think he has the juice for it. I think he was
Do you
really
think
good
the
last
Titans
season.
look at him as the wide receiver too?
I think so.
Okay.
Honestly, with you, but I mean, you bring in Calvin Ridley and you pay him that money. You're not paying him to be a number. You're not.
Good
You're not
point.
giving him
Good
23 million
point.
to be a number two receiver. Like,
Yeah.
I just you brought in what Hop on a 2-year deal. I can't remember what the money was, but like, he was in the teens, right? D Hop.
I want to say, yeah. I mean, I could probably look it up right now. But yeah,
Like,
I think that was the hot take in that like I don't know that the Titans look at him as their wide receiver too, but I think it does make sense that they should. Like he's older and you just committed the third most guaranteed money to Calvin Ridley of any receiver in the league. So yeah, I think that they probably should look at him. There should be a changing of the guard.
yeah, he's getting 8 million in base salary. And so
Yeah, he
what?
signed a 2-year, $26 million deal with the Titans.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah. So I mean, that's mid money right there at that
Yeah.
point. Well, I think Gabe Davis just got paid like 13 million a year. So
Yeah, shout out to Gabe Davis. Yep. He took Calvin Ridley's spot. So
yeah, I don't know about that part, but
but yeah,
Gabe Davis is gonna be a really nice 3 receiver. They still need to find their 1 receiver or something. I don't know what they're doing.
no, yeah, they
Jacksonville,
got a
but
lot of Christian Kirk vibes, but yeah, that no, what were you gonna say about Christian Kirk?
I think he's really good.
Oh, you think he's really
Not
good?
not your number one. But I do think he's
Oh,
really
okay,
good.
yeah,
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
agreed.
Okay.
I think he's good. I don't
Yeah.
think
Oh
he
yeah.
should
I
be
think he's
their
a
number
great
one.
number two. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah, I
Like
think he's a great
super
number two.
good.
Um, in the Christian Kirk mold of receivers. So what a segue. Nah. The Chiefs signed Marquise Brown 1 year, $7 million. I think that it was like really rumored amongst like NFL Twitter that like he's gonna go there because it just makes sense in your head. But I was kind of skeptical of like, will you go there? Because it's not like the Chiefs are doling out multi-year deals. Um, but he still is only 26. And I think this was pretty great for all parties involved. Like, I'm sure he had longer term deals on the table, but there's like no way to better juice your value than to go play with Mahomes for a year. Like even if he has a down year, right? Which I personally don't think that he is. But let's say he does. Let's say he does have a down year, right? All it takes is one big playoff game for teams to buy back in. And if they do three-peat, well, he's golden. Like he's getting paid a long-term deal somewhere if he has playoff success. Mahomes got Juju Smith-Schuster paid. And I think like Hollywood is probably a better receiver than Juju was when he was on the Chiefs. And granted, they're probably going to play different roles. I think he does fill a nice role for them. I think a lot of people are saying he's going to play the MVS role. By that, they mean like the guy that stretches the field, because I think Rashee Rice does a lot of good stuff in between the numbers, run after catch stuff. I think he was third. He had the third most yards after the catch of any receiver last year. Obviously, Travis Kelce dominates the middle of the field. He has been for years. And then Hollywood's a great field stretching guy in theory. I don't think that he necessarily has been in his career, but like he has 4.32 speed, and Mahomes has one of the best arms in football. So like it just makes sense. And so I think a lot of people's knocks on MVS was like his drop rate and like how much he dropped the ball. I think Hollywood has pretty secure hands. MVS had a drop rate of 4.8% on 14 deep targets. Hollywood had 20 deep targets, one drop all year. So, like I think that like he's just a more sure-handed receiver. And I think when you're playing with Mahomes, that's important. And he's also, when I was looking up like stats, he's drawn 257 yards of pass interference since coming in the league. That's the second most of any receiver since he came in the league. I was like, damn, I didn't know Hollywood was drawing PIs like that. But hey, that's a good thing with Mahomes. So yeah, I think if he stays healthy, which has been the issue for him, he's a shorter guy, a smaller guy in frame. I think if he can stay healthy, he'll have a really good season. I don't know that I think he'll hit 1,000 yards, but like I could very well see like a 700 to 800 yards, 7 to 8 touchdown season from Hollywood Brown. And I think that would be more than enough to get him paid next year. So yeah.
Now I'm not saying this from like, is it enough from Mahomes, but do you think the receiver room is just enough, or do they need to get another piece in there?
Now, Khalil, I thought that the Chiefs were not going to win the chip for a very, very long time for that same reason, that I thought that they didn't have enough. I didn't think that Rashee Rice was great, or I thought that Rashee Rice was good. I didn't think he was good enough to be the second option to Travis Kelce. I thought Travis Kelce was declining. I think it's more so that he just doesn't really care about the regular season as much anymore. And so like he just takes a couple plays off more than he would in the past couple of years. Do I think it's enough? I don't think that the Chiefs are going to not take a receiver. I think that it would be great if they went and took a late first round receiver or a second round receiver. But do they have enough as currently constructed? 1,000%. I think so. If they had enough last year, they got more than enough this year. So
Yeah. I mean, so just like, should they bring in something else, or like, they should just bring in anything else. And I agree with you. I think they should bring in another receiver. Just draft another one. It's still Hollywood's on a 1-year deal. You don't know if you want to bring him in next year. You don't know what he's going to do for you this year. I think he'll have a really good year with the Chiefs. But I still think, don't do what you did last year. Well, yeah, don't do what you did last year, and really bolster that receiver room, and give Patrick Mahomes what he needs going forward. And I know there were like a ton of reports about how Brett Veach had tried to move up into the draft, and just really no one would make a deal with him. But again, I think they need to.
that's what happens when you win chips.
Yeah,
yeah.
So,
good luck, buddy.
They need to bring in another receiver. I think, or not, maybe not need, but I think they should. But I think Brown's going to be great in that offense. It's great to know his drops have gone down. I'm pretty sure he had a really bad drop problem in Baltimore. But I think he's been really good with Arizona. His numbers have been very consistent. I think there was a drop off once Kyler Murray came back a little bit.
Yeah.
This past season. But I still think Browns have been super consistent, even with some really sporadic QB play. Whoever it's been, for the past couple of seasons with Kyler out, obviously Josh Dobbs and some other guys, Colt McCoy, I think maybe. But
in tune.
yeah, it's crazy. But I love that grab for them. You got a really good receiver with some high upside, a guy who can, be a huge deep threat, but can obviously do more than just like what you get from a McCole Hardman or another speedster, MVS. Even in that sense, even though he made some really big plays, I just think Hollywood brings a lot more, to the offensive scheme, and who better to really put him in positions to succeed than Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, honestly, at that point. So I think he's going to have a really big year, right beside Rashid Rice and Travis Kelce.
Yeah, there's no one that I trust more to utilize him, to like analyze him, find his strengths, and utilize those strengths more than Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, right? Because like I was watching a Brett Coleman video where he was talking about Malachi Corley, and he compared him to Rashee Rice, and I felt it was really interesting that he said like he didn't really see Rashee Rice as this wide receiver one because his contested catch rate was so low, and he wasn't expecting him to go to a team and be utilized in the way that he was, right? But like he went to the Chiefs. Andy Reid saw that like, hey, this guy is not this typical X receiver who's going downfield, we're throwing stuff up to him, he's catching it and running and doing all that. No, he's a guy that we're going to get in space, create some easy opportunities for, and let him work after the catch. And they put him in that position, and he thrived. And
Yeah.
so, like, I
watched that
trust
video
him
too.
to do he was cooking. I
Yeah.
trust him to do the same with Marquise Brown, right? Like, even MVS, like they didn't have MVS doing stuff he wasn't supposed to be good at. Whether or not he catches the ball is not up to Andy Reid, but like putting him in the position to succeed, I think they did a great job at. Same thing with Juju, same thing with, Travis Kelce, same thing with McCole Hardman. McCole Hardman was horrible on the Jets, and then he's making Super Bowl winning catches on the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Like I think that goes to show like they just know how to utilize their guys. And so I think Andy Reid, we saw he was texting Marquise Brown, trying to get him to come, trying to recruit him. He obviously sees something there that he can, tap into and take advantage of. And that's why I think more than anything, Marquise Brown's going to have a good year, because if he can stay healthy, he'll be used better than he was used on the Cardinals and on the Ravens. And he'll be, his strengths will be magnified on the Chiefs alongside playing with the most talented quarterback you've ever seen.
Yeah. Real quick side note, like that's why rankings can be so tough sometimes, like draft rankings or whatever the case is, because you just never know where guys are going to get drafted to and how that situation you can change. There were people who were higher on a Puka Nacua, maybe not in the top 5 higher, but like they were higher on him. But like now we look stupid because he's not in anyone's top 5, but he also gets in a system where they know exactly where to use him or how to use him, put him in spots to succeed. So like rankings can be just so tough. Going to your, Rashid Rice type of thing, maybe even your
Or
Malachi Corley type of thing. With
And
those
you look at like a JSN who like was a lot of people's wide receiver one analytic darling, like insanely good analytically, and
Yeah.
a lot of stuff he did great on tape too. He had that 1,600-yard receiving season with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Ebuka and a bunch of great guys in that Ohio State receiving room. And then, but like that was his only year of production really, because his freshman year he didn't play a lot, and his last year he sat out with injury for the most part. So like a lot of people are going off that year of Jaxon Smith-Njigba, analytic darling, everyone's wide receiver one for the most part. He comes into a situation like if he goes to a team like the Chargers instead of Quentin Johnston, I'm sure he has a better season. But he goes to a team where it's DK Metcalf, who isn't some old aging wide receiver. Like he's in his prime. He's a wide receiver one in his prime. It's not like where Puka went to, the Rams and he has to compete with, Cooper Kupp. Obviously he's declining in skill level. He's aging. Jordan Addison goes to the
injury for
and
Cooper
injury.
Kupp.
Yeah. And Jordan Addison goes to the Vikings. Justin Jefferson misses half the year. Like the Seahawks didn't deal with like Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf played 15 and 16 games. So like there wasn't a lot of space. And when it comes to scheme, like Shane Waldron was drawing up a lot of 11-person personnel, 2 tight ends, like he just wasn't offered a lot. So like situation matters, like JSN skill wise probably has a better year if he isn't on the Seahawks. So like I think that, whereas like Quentin Johnston, he had every opportunity to break out. Keenan Allen missed a lot of time. Mike Williams missed a lot of time. He's playing with Justin Herbert. and he still had a historically bad rookie year. So like for stuff like that, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm out on Quentin Johnston. I was out on Quentin Johnston before the draft because he ghosted in the national championship game, and
Yeah.
that was all I needed to see. But like, I
I
think
talked
stuff like
myself
that
into
is
him.
predictive.
I talked myself into him, and I regret it every day. I could have had Jordan Addison in one of my drafts, and I picked QJ instead. And
And
that
that's
didn't work
tough.
out.
That's something you're gonna have to live with.
Yeah, some
Like
of it.
so you have to live with. But yeah, that now that we've gone off our wide receiver rant, that's how we feel about it. Marquise Brown on the Chiefs. The next one we're kind of going into running backs here. Is Saquon Barkley on the Eagles. And this was one of the bigger signings of the entire offseason. 3 years, 38 million, 26 million guaranteed, second most guaranteed money of any running back in the NFL, fourth most per year, fourth most in total value. I'm kind of torn on it for the Eagles, right? Like I could see a realm in which it doesn't work out for them and they have all these great players on offense and it just still isn't enough because they're just, maybe not fundamentally built right. Jason Kelsey also retires. So, who knows what kind of impact that has. But I can also see a realm in which he becomes their CMC, right? Like Saquon has never had a dominant O line in his entire career, consistently had to make defenders miss behind the line of scrimmage. PFF ranked the Giants as the third worst O line last year, 67% run block win rate, which was second to last. You look at the Eagles, they were PFF's number one ranked O line and number one in run block win rate. Losing Jason Kelsey will obviously have some sort of impact on that. But Landon Dickerson was number one in run block win rate amongst interior linemen. Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata, number one and number two in run block win rate amongst tackles. Those guys will still be there. So like that's not going anywhere. And so like even if the Eagles go from best O line in the league to 15th best, that's still 15 better than what Saquon was dealing with. And that's like taking the Eagles O line down an extreme amount. It's more so likely they're somewhere in between, 8, 9, 10, and like that's still the best O line Saquon has ever played behind. And so like I think I could see something of a CMC situation. He was really, really good on the Panthers. Horrible situation. He goes to the 49ers, levels up, entirely new level of greatness that CMC has reached. And the same can happen for Saquon. Miles Sanders and DeAndre Swift both had Pro Bowl seasons behind the Eagles offensive line. And so, I think Saquon Barkley is more talented than both of them. Only thing question mark for me is the Jason Kelsey factor, but I guess we'll see, right? And so overall, I don't mind the Eagles going out and splurging on the whole running back thing if that running back is Saquon Barkley because I believe in the talent.
Yeah, I don't say this to discount Jason Kelsey being who he is, one of the greatest centers, offensive linemen we've ever seen. Huge for the Philadelphia Eagles for as long as he's been there. But I think they're going to be just fine. I think they develop extremely well. They draft extremely well at that position. They know exactly what they're looking for. You got Landon Dickerson. I think Cam Jurgens will be just fine coming up as well. You got the tackles on the outside. Like I think they're going to be good. Obviously, you got the guys on the perimeter. They bring in a Devontae Parker as well, which is a nice 3-4 receiver. I think they've been missing a number 3 guy to be consistent in that area, maybe. And then obviously you got Goddard still there too. I think you have the pieces. You got a new play caller in Kellen Moore, if I'm not mistaken, as well, who I think wants to establish that run game, who wants to establish consistency, who was not a bad play caller for his time in Dallas, even then at that point. So I think everything is at play for the Eagles to bring in a different side of their offense, a more dynamic side of their offense that we may not have seen in the past when they've had a Miles Sanders or a DeAndre Swift, who are fine running backs. They're okay, they're good, but neither one of them, like you said, are on the level of a Saquon Barkley, who is just, if he's healthy, he is a top 5, top 2, top 3 back in the NFL, and probably one of the most talented running backs we've ever seen. So I think that him being behind this offensive line, him being in this scheme that wants to utilize him in different ways, him being with as talented as an offense is, I think it's a slam dunk signing. I think it's in the realm of a CMC going to the 49ers type of signing, and I would be buying up a lot of Saquon Barkley stock if I was a fantasy owner or a better, whatever the case is. I love the signing, and I think it's kind of a no brainer. bringing in more talent like they did.
Well, yeah, I'm glad we're aligned on the Saquon front.
Yeah.
The other two running backs that signed were Josh Jacobs to the Packers and Derrick Henry to the Ravens. Just to touch on Josh Jacobs to the Packers, I don't really have too much to say about it. I was pretty shocked. Like I didn't think that Aaron Jones would be back just because there's been contract disputes. I don't think they valued him as much as he wanted them to value him, and he was looking for this loyalty that I just don't think that they had. Um, and so I wasn't expecting them to keep him, but I wasn't expecting them to go and sign Josh Jacobs to a 4-year,
Yeah.
$48 million deal. I will say all of his money is guaranteed in year one. So like it is a very front loaded
That's
contract. So
crazy.
like they
That's
they
insane.
could they could pack him up. But I think that, it's a good deal for the Packers. I think Josh Jacobs is another guy that was in a pretty bad situation on the Raiders. And at least for a running back. And now he's in a pretty good situation where what should be really good offense behind Jordan Love, top 10 QB, in my opinion. And their wide receiver core is basically, pick and choose. They got a lot of decent guys, Jaden Reed, Dontavion Wicks, who I'm really high on, uh, Romeo Dobbs, Christian Watson, Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave. They got a lot of guys that can catch the ball. And so they re-signed AJ Dillon. I like what the Packers are doing this offseason. I typically like what they do in the offseason. They're a really well-run organization, and they have been for a long time. So I trust the Josh Jacobs signing. Did you have any thoughts on it or not?
Brother, I don't know who is going to be the number one receiver out of that group, by the way, like at all. I
I'm a
think
big Dontavion Wicks guy.
Christian Watts is my favorite. I think he's has the highest upside, a lot of speed, a lot of size, a lot of injury concerns though that have held him back, especially some hamstring stuff. But they're all really good though. It's a crazy thing. Like there's four legitimate receivers over there: Wicks, Dobbs, Watson, and Reed. Like, and they all are different as well. So that's a crazy thing too. So they're in a great spot there. The Josh Jacobs signing was a little surprising as well. I hate that they are losing Aaron Jones. I felt like he was such a staple of that team, of that offense. I mean, he's a do it all type of back, even at his size. Like he's a great runner in between the tackles, outside the tackles. He is amazing in pass pro. Will pick up anyone, any blitzer, any linebacker, whatever he needs to do. He's great in the pass game as well as a running back. Like he is a do it all type of back. It just also getting older. I think he's almost 30 years old, has injury concerns, missed a lot of the year. They had to kind of manage him along that way. So it kind of makes sense you didn't want to give him too much. But Josh Jacobs, 25, 26 years old, young back. I think he can kind of do a little bit more than what we've seen with the Oakland Raiders. Still a really good runner himself, had a great year 2 years ago. So, like, I think it makes sense. And you don't have to just stick with AJ Dillon, which would suck because
Yeah, he's
he's
not
not
good.
great.
So
We've
yeah,
seen Josh Jacobs be able to really carry a load when healthy, when in shape, when coming into the season in shape. So I think that's a easy signing. And then Aaron Jones with the Minnesota Vikings. I love the move. It's really funny. He's staying in the same division.
yeah.
Kind of crazy that way. But I think Aaron Jones, when healthy, is also a really high level back and probably underappreciated in a lot of ways too.
No, totally agree. I think Aaron Jones did a lot of good stuff for them last year. I think had he had a more healthy season, maybe things would have worked out differently. But I think they were ready to move on. And they ended up getting Josh Jacobs. Talking about Derrick Henry to the Ravens might be my favorite signing of the offseason, just from a pure fun standpoint. 2 years, 16 million, 9 million fully guaranteed. He's 30 years old. I know this hurts your heart. He's your guy. But he is 30 years old. He led the NFL in carries last year yet again. Since 2019, he has 224 more carries than any other running back in the NFL. So there's definitely some tread on the tires. He was still over 4 yards per carry. He was still ninth in evaded tackles amongst running backs. He was still eighth in breakaway run rate at 5.7%. And a breakaway run is basically any rush of 15 yards or longer. And he had 16, which was the second most in the NFL. And that's literally being the number one option on the team. So I don't think Derrick Henry has lost it by any means. I think this is a match made in heaven fit of Lamar and Derrick Henry and the Ravens and the type of style that they want to run and the type of offenses they want to run. Lamar and Derrick Henry option plays truly might be unstoppable. Like if it's 3rd and 2, I
What
don't
are you
know
gonna
how they
do?
don't.
What are you
I
gonna
don't
do?
know how they don't convert on every 3rd and short. I really don't. Um, and I was listening to the Ringer NFL podcast, and they said something that really stuck with me before Derrick Henry signed, right? And they were like, how a lot of linebackers get a running start to Derrick Henry because, like, when they run, options or whatever in Tennessee, they're not really reading whether or not the QB is going to hand it off. Like, their number one priority is always Derrick Henry, regardless. So they're just trying to get to him, and then they'll deal with whatever else. So like a lot
A
of
lot of
linebackers gonna get a running
yeah,
start and
a
then
lot of fast flow, a lot of
yeah, a
yeah.
lot of that kind of stuff. And so like that's how they, kind of wrap them up. But on the Ravens, like that's gonna force linebackers to actually have to read out the option. And like
Slow play to like 10 like times 10 like I
and it's crazy. Like you can't just commit to Derrick Henry because Lamar is the most dynamic running quarterback we have ever seen in the league. And so you will get cooked. And then, oh no, we're gonna go at Lamar. Oh, nothing crazy. We just have the most dominant running back of the last decade. So like I don't know what defenses are going to do. Like, it's going to force linebackers to like have to read it out and not be able to get a running start on Derrick Henry. And he was already shrugging off 240-pound guys when they were getting a running start. So, like, I don't know how they're going to stop this offense. I love the Ravens going into next year. I think they're going to be amazing. And I truly do not see, barring injury, how they don't convert on every 3rd and short because this is a match made in heaven.
So I can start from a lot of different areas. I'll say this one first. Brett Coleman, you talked about watching one of his videos earlier. Um, I've I watched a lot of Brett Coleman myself, and from watching one of his videos, he's like, what if the Ravens draft Brock Bowers just because it's like just a Ravens pick, right? So like, what if they draft Brock Bowers and you see Brock Bowers in this Wildcat offense, and you have Brock Bowers, you got Lamar Jackson, and you got Derrick Henry all in the backfield together. Like, what are you supposed to do then?
Yeah.
Like it was just the funniest thing to me. Like, what is a defensive coordinator? What is a defense supposed to do? It just makes no sense to me. So that was really fun to imagine for a little bit. But even if you just dumb it down to Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, it's really still much the same effect and same impact. Like I try to put myself in a defensive player's shoes, which I used to play defense. I played linebacker inside and outside. Like you have to slow play that. Like you can't let Lamar get behind you at the gate. But you also have to think of the same thing for Derrick Henry, whether he's getting a full head of steam and he can break off long runs like we've seen, or he's just, going to get those 2 yards easily like that. So, like, how do you stop that? And there's only a few teams who can actually match up with that. I feel like, as far as just like size wise and really maybe committing to one side and not maybe not having to pick their poison at that point. But I just don't know what you're supposed to do as a team when it comes to defending those two guys on the field in the same backfield together on any of those option plays. But Derek he's still good for wherever he is as far as age. I think he's close to 30. He still has a lot of miles left on. I think the contact balance in the past year or so has gotten a little worse just because just coming back from injury and still maybe getting his feet a little bit more. But I think they can run any scheme with him. He'll be fine in any offense, and you can really still establish an identity, which I think we failed to see, especially in the playoffs when they needed it the most. And I think when you have a Derrick Henry, I feel like you're able to really do that and really take more pressure off Lamar in certain situations, and again establish an identity and really stick to that, and really be able to you know pass the ball and really be this not air raid type of team as far as scheme wise, but be like go through the air and put half passing yards, or if you need to, you can also give it to a very consistent running back who's going to get you 5, 6, 4, 7 yards at a time and really milk the clock and really wear on the defense. And we've always seen it that Henry always gets better. Well, later the game goes, and then later in the season, he always gets better as well and always improves his game. So that's going to be fun to see. I think the Ravens need to get a receiver, by the way, in the draft. You lose Odell. I think they lost Devin Duvernay. Of course, you have Bateman and Zay Flowers. Bateman has not been able to be healthy, um, especially before this past season. But I think you need to really find another receiver. Mark Andrews usually ends up getting injured at some point. Isaiah likely came on a lot, but I really feel like you need to get a receiver just to present just one more threat when it comes to really shoring up both sides. So like a team doesn't have to just focus on the run game or just focus on the pass game, but they have to focus on both things. And they also need to draft offensive linemen or develop offensive linemen, whatever the case looks. But they've lost some guys on that side, so maybe they have some guys that they can look to and develop as well.
Yeah, no, I think that we're both aligned on Derrick Henry and the Ravens being really good next year. And that takes us to the back half of what we're going to talk about. It is the quarterback ride of a lifetime. First of all, I guess we can just touch on Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson was cut by the Denver Broncos. And he is now a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Broncos, he's basically signed a vet min, and Broncos are paying 90% of his actual salary or whatever. The most dead cap, it's like 85 million dead cap, the most dead cap of all time for the Broncos going for it. Nice. They just wanted to get Russ out of there.
Yeah.
Two things. I think it's worth the Steelers taking a flyer. I also think Russell Wilson is no longer a great quarterback. And so last year, he had the 10th worst EPA per dropback amongst starters, 27th best accuracy rating, 27th best deep ball completion percentage, 27th best play action completion percentage, 17th clean pocket completion percentage. So like he hasn't been great. There's been a clear decline since he left Seattle. Hey, say what you want. Hey, we was cooking, but not no more. He's been a clear decline since he left Seattle. I will say though, like I'm kind of like shitting on him, so I'll give him some props. He was a really good under pressure last season, like top 5 QB in the league under pressure, and so like he still has juice left. I still think he's better than Kenny Pickett will ever be in his entire life. And so it gives the Steelers like it's worth it for them, especially with the cost that he is. Like you're basically paying him less than you were paying Kenny Pickett to come and be a better quarterback than Kenny Pickett. And it gives them the best chance to win games in an absolutely loaded division. They are probably in the best division of football, and they have to play the AFC West. So Mahomes and Justin Herbert and whatever the Raiders decide to do, and the NFC East next year. So the Broncos, so the Cowboys and the Eagles. So it's gonna be a rough division, rough schedule for them. I think Justin Fields is starting by week 7, but that's a conversation for another day. And yeah, what do you think about Russ to the Steelers?
I think it is a low risk, high reward move, probably. I think Russ has struggled at different parts of his game for the past 2 seasons. I don't think we're at a point where we're going to see a lot of the best of Russ. I do, in theory, I like him in an Art Smith system. I like him with play action. I like getting him in rhythm. I like taking the offensive pressure off of Russ. You have a Jalen Warren and Najee Harris in the backfield, two-headed monster that way. I think they really came along last season, really was able to establish themselves in the run game. Offensive line got a lot better as well. And I think Art Smith will really be able to maximize that. Even if the head coaching stint wasn't great, I think being an offensive play caller, he'll do just fine in that system. I think I love Russ Wilson under Mike Tomlin. I think that's a really good fit. I think they can really support each other, encourage one another, whatever the case is. Because Russ can really get what he needs out of that relationship. But it's just as far as really be able to attack different parts of the field and maximize that offense, I just don't know if he's at that point anymore, man. Like I think he can be really good for George Pickens down the field, outside the numbers in the way, but
See what he
maybe
did for Cortland Sutton, you know?
yeah, like I like that makes sense to me, but like being consistent and making and driving the ball down the field, like especially over the middle, making consistent throws that way, anticipating letting the ball loose. I just don't know if Russ can do that, and I feel like we've seen him in situations where he's been able to do that, and it's clear on the picture there, but he just hasn't been able to be consistent that way. So I think he's really struggled with that over the past couple of years. So going to your point about maybe a Justin Fields starting by week 7, I can see that happening for sure. I don't
Yeah,
want
you
that to
can.
happen. Like I think it'd be nice for Justin Fields to maybe chill out for a season and take a break. But I just think Russ is at a point where it would be a little foolish to think that he can get back to where he's been before. Um, but yeah, I just don't know about it. And I follow this one of these a QB coach on Twitter, and he said that Russ has been changing a lot when it comes to his mechanics. I don't know what he means by that necessarily. I'm not a huge QB guy. I don't know a whole bunch, but it looks like he's less over the top, maybe a little bit quicker, maybe a little bit lighter, just in general of who he is as a person. But we'll see how it goes. I'm just not sure it's going to be the move they really need it to be, especially
Mhm.
bringing in a younger quarterback who also has some problems when it comes to throwing the football.
Yeah, no, totally. The QB carousel was pretty wild this year. I'm just gonna rattle off the remaining, and then we'll end it with our Bears Justin Fields talk. So Desmond Ritter, he got traded to the Cardinals for Rondale Moore, pretty much
Weird
straight
trade,
up.
man. That was a
Which is
weird move.
you rarely see a player for player trade like the Cardinals just clearing out their receiver room. Um, but yeah, Desmond Ritter is now a Cardinal. Kenny Pickett got traded to the Eagles for a fourth and a third and 2 7s. Oh no, he got traded to the Eagles with a fourth for a third and 2 7s. So he basically got traded for a third. Um, Justin Fields got traded to the Steelers for a conditional sixth that turns into a fourth if he plays 51% of games. Russell Wilson signed to the Steelers. Sam Darnold signed to the Vikings. Gardner Minshew signed to the Raiders. Mac Jones got traded to the Jags for a sixth. Drew Lock signed with the Giants, and Sam Howell got traded to the Seahawks for a third. Uh, Basically, damn near the Kenny Pickett trade, but except without all the sevens and whatnot. But yeah, Sam Howell's a Seahawk. I like the move for the Seahawks. That's the one that means the most to me. I think the rest of them are pretty not so crazy needle movers. Like Kenny Pickett's not going to play unless Jalen Hurts is hurt. He's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Desmond Ritter probably won't play unless Kyler's hurt. Sam Darnold might be the starter. I think we've seen enough of Sam Darnold to know that he's not good. And so that's where I land with that. Gardner Minshew, I like it for Devontae Adams because he's going to hyper target him. Michael Pittman I want to say he was at least top 5 in targets last year. And so Devontae Adams is going to go crazy. Mac Jones will probably not play unless Trevor Lawrence goes down. But Trevor Lawrence did go down. I think like we are seeing how important backup QBs are to teams. Like Trevor Lawrence went down last year and they had
Absolutely.
CJ Beathard and they could not move the ball, And so like if like I think Mac Jones is a high level backup. He might not be a great starter, but you can create some offense. Like Mac Jones is
Yeah.
not the end all be all. He can win you a game. And so like Drew Lock, he's already showed he can win us a game. He beat the Eagles last year. So, Drew Lock's a
That's great.
great backup for the Giants. Might be the starter. And Sam Howell for us. I think that's a great backup for us. I think John Schneider loves him a big armed QB, specifically of the white variety. And they went and they got one because I think that he wanted to draft a quarterback. I just don't think the cards were lining up for us to be able to get one at 16. And I don't think he was willing to trade up because we don't have a second because we traded it for Leonard Williams. So I just don't think it was going to line up. We ended up giving up our third. We have 2/3. So I think in our head, we look at it like that was our quarterback that we drafted. We drafted Sam Howell, basically. He's 23 years old, and which is, around the same age as a lot of guys in this draft class. And he basically has one full year as a starter already in the NFL. So like if we want to have him be a project and have him start when he's 25 and sit under Geno for 2 years, then I think that works out cool. Do I think he's the long-term answer? I don't. I still think we should go out and try and get a guy, but I just don't think that the cards lined up for us to go do that this year. So I'm cool with taking the shot on Sam Howell. Did you have any thoughts on any of the QB carousel moves?
Yeah, I was just, I'm glad you talked about Sam Howell. I was just wondering how you felt about that, if you felt he was a QB of the future
I don't.
when it came. Yeah, I didn't
No.
think so. I'm not super high on Sam Howell, and he reminds me of a worser Baker Mayfield. So
Mm.
I don't really care for it. Yeah, I think I'm surprised that you maybe feel that way about Sam Darnold. There's a large group in the NFL community that is like higher on Sam Darnold still. or is still
No,
high on
he's
him.
not good. He's not good. The fact that people think he's good and Justin isn't is crazy.
I mean, he might be all right. I mean, he's been, if we could talk about, situational, type of things, like he's been dealt a rough hand too.
That is
Not in the
fair.
not in the best franchises, but when you talk about the Jets and the Panthers, which we have just talked about the Panthers being one of the worst ran or run franchises in the NFL. So like, he hasn't had the best dealt hand when it comes to it and being a backup for the 49ers, which is
Free
nice
Trey
for him.
Lance. Am I right? I need my boy to get a start.
Yeah, we'll see about that. But no, it's
We were
been
high on
interesting.
Trey Lance 2 years ago.
Huh?
Me and you were high on, and Justice, I think, were high on
Was
Trey
I high
Lance.
on Trey Lance?
Were
What
you
did I
or were you
say?
not?
I
Wasn't it
don't
me and
know.
Justice?
I don't think
Maybe
I
it was
was
me and
super high.
Justice.
I mean, I was high on Zach Wilson. I'll say that part.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, I know you
Yeah,
were.
but like, we don't have to talk about that
That pro
part.
day got you.
Yeah, we ain't got to talk about that. But I think backup QBs have become extremely, like, they've always been important, but we've really seen how important they are, especially this past season. You know, especially when you look at the New York Jets in that situation, not having a backup QB who's capable enough to really take pressure off the offense or off the team and really command an offense and run an offense. So, you can lose a season not having a backup quarterback, and I think a lot of these teams are realizing that and are making moves, some high upside moves as well when it comes to some younger guys who have shown a little bit of something, develop them for a little bit, maybe flip them later on, or whatever the case is. It makes a lot of sense that they're making these moves for these guys.
Boom. And then last but not least, just going over, I think the Bears had probably the biggest decision of the offseason. They were one of the biggest storylines coming into the offseason. The Panthers, they fleeced the Panthers, ended up getting the number one overall pick this year. And they had a decision to make. Before they made that decision, they traded for Keenan Allen. They gave up Chargers are in cap hell. They ended up releasing Mike Williams. He's a Jet now. And they asked Keenan Allen to restructure. He said, absolutely not. I just came off one of the best seasons of my career. I'm not restructuring anything. I want my money this year. And they said, well, all righty then. We're going to go ahead and trade you for a fourth round pick. And so for the Jets, that's a no brainer, in my opinion. DJ Moore's great, but I think you need another guy. Like when you look at that offense, I don't think Tyler Scott is great. I don't think Darnell Mooney is now no longer even in Chicago. I want to say he's a Falcon too. I think, yeah, he's a Falcon. So they have DJ Moore, Tyler Scott, Cole Kmet, and I want to say that was their offense. So like going to
St. Brown, who's a really
yeah,
great,
Equinemi St.
great,
Brown.
great blocker.
So yeah, great. Yeah. Brother of the year. And so
He's a
they
great
had to
blocker. He's a great blocker.
they had to go get another guy. I think they now have maybe a top five receiver duo in the league. I think that, Keenan Allen's 32. He's coming off a season where he just had 1,200 yards and 7 TDs, which was the second most, his second highest yardage total since 2017. Analytically, he's still insanely elite. So ESPN has this like wide receiver grading system where they grade wide receivers on like how they get open, their catches, their yards after the catch, individual grades, and then combine it into one. DJ Moore had the fifth highest overall grade of every wide receiver in the NFL this year. Keenan Allen was the ninth highest. So they now have two top 10 graded wide receivers. Crazy enough, out of the top 10, 4 teams had 2 players in the top 10. The Bears are now one of them. The other 3 were the 49ers, the Texans, and the Steelers, crazy enough. And so, yeah, they now have a pretty good wide receiver duo. Keenan Allen was far and away the best wide receiver in the league in getting open this season. He was the only wide receiver in the league with an open rating above 90. Low risk, high reward move for the Bears. You're not drafting anyone in the 4th round that's nearly as good as Keenan Allen. So you might as well go and give your rookie wide receiver, your rookie quarterback, a better chance to have a great season and let him walk into. We keep talking. I think the theme of this podcast has been like QBs that have walked into bad situations. And so, the Bears doing their best to try and look at that trend and be like, let's give our guy who we're taking at the number 1 overall pick, presumably Caleb Williams, the best chance to succeed and not have this organizational dysfunction be, how he starts his career. And so I think it was a great move for the Bears.
Yeah, I think it was too. one of the thoughts I've been having is how much pressure that does actually put on your rookie quarterback to succeed. He's coming to a situation where they had they really did a great job last season as far as defensively being like a top 10, top 15 defense towards the end there, really shoring up a few things there. And then offensively, really coming together as well, especially when you got Justin Fields back in the offense. So I feel like, they're in a really good position, brought in a new coaching staff a little bit as far as on the offensive end. So I think they've done a really good job putting the rookie quarterback, whoever that's going to be, in a position to succeed. I'm excited about that. Hopefully, we do get a different Bears team, a different Bears just franchise going forward. Less what we've seen before as far as what we saw with Justin Fields in that situation. But I love what they're doing so far. I think Keenan Allen was a great grab, and I think DJ Moore will be really good again heading back into the offense. And I think they're in a good spot. Brought in DeAndre Swift. You still got Roshan Johnson. Pretty sure you still have Khalil Herbert as well. So you got a few different guys in that backfield. Of course, they had a lot of injuries in that backfield last season. So I think that's a pretty smart maybe idea just to bring in a Swift. But I still am pretty high on Roshan Johnson to get some run as well.
Kentucky lost. Crazy.
Yeah, I'm watching it.
Yeah, that's
It's
rough.
crazy.
Um,
And then like the group message is going nuts right now. I'm
yeah,
watching it.
that's
They're
rough.
all UK fans. It is just going nuts.
That's a tough look. The first big team
14,
to
bro. You
lose.
lost to the 14th
Yeah,
seed.
that and like to be the first team, like top three seeded team to lose is tough.
That's wild.
And
Tough.
then the last thing I do want to get here, obviously the Bears traded Justin Fields. I think it's very clear how I feel about it. I want to know how you feel about it though, my boy. They traded him for a conditional sixth. What do you think of the whole trading Justin Fields, Caleb Williams saga and how it ended for the Bears?
I think I saw your run of tweets, especially when it happened.
Okay, I want to make clear I was very emotional at that point
You
in
were,
time. I was
you,
going off pure
you
instinct.
were, you were. It was
It
it
was
was
also
interesting.
St. Patrick's Day Saturday, and I may or may not have been at a bar. So
Yeah, I feel like I could like feel that through your tweets. It was insane. Like these, but I do think it was a no brainer. I do get the side of it where you keep the pick, you keep Justin Fields, or maybe you trade back the pick, recoup some more assets that way. Go draft another receiver. Go draft a defensive guy or an offensive lineman at the 9 pick. Whatever you want to do. Maybe trade back from that pick, get more assets. Uh, I think there's a one side of it too. Like you have to hit on those picks as well. But the other side of it is Justin Fields has to be the guy. Like he has to like you can gain all these assets you want, you can trade back all you want, you can, make those picks. But if he's not the guy at the end of the day, I don't think your team is going where you need it to be. And from what we've seen, and I think they've done an average job, I would say, of putting talent around him more recently than before. When you bring in the DJ Moore, when you have that defense really improving the way it was, the run game was decent, I would say. Offensive line was a little bit better, not to super high standards. Even the play calling was a little skeptical sometimes. Maybe even trying to incorporate his run game and his run style into the offense more, taking pressure off of the pass game and maybe where he struggles sometimes. I think they did an average job of putting him in positions to succeed. But at the end of the day, I just feel like Caleb is an awesome prospect, man. Like I think it's a slam dunk pick. People have all these types of feelings about him, on the field, off the field type of stuff. But I have been pretty high on him for the past 2 seasons, 2 years. I'm pretty excited to see him actually come into the NFL. He is. We're gonna do QB rankings, or at least I'm gonna do QB rankings. He is my number one
damn
guy,
right you
and
are.
that's not changing. I think he does a great. I'll talk about Caleb at a later time. But I think the smart move was to move on from Justin Fields. I think he still has a lot of things to fix in his game. I think he still fixed a lot from when he did get drafted. When it comes down to like the throwing mechanics and the long release and sometimes funky, I don't think he's always able to really control the ball the way he wants to. make all the throws he wants to, or even just like flick it and get it off the way he needs to, or when he can. And his processing has been well documented as far as being able to get through reads and really be a high level thrower in the league. I think the running is special. We've obviously seen that. I think we've seen flashes of the throwing and all of it come together. But I feel like where we have Ryan Poles really needed to make a statement and secure his job and find his guy. I think moving on from Fields and putting him in a different situation and trying to do right by him by sending him to the Steelers was the right move, and bringing in a Caleb Williams is presumably Caleb Williams is the smartest thing to do in the situation.
Yeah, and so my thoughts are way more refined than they were that night. Breaking news, I think Ryan Poles is a really good GM. I think he did try and do right by Justin, which I think says a lot about him because he didn't draft Justin, right? Like Ryan Pace drafted Justin. He then got fired. Ryan Poles got hired. He got handed down Justin. And, they developed this relationship. And so, like, he could have sent him wherever the fuck, he could have sent him whoever was offering the best pick, whatever. He worked with Justin's team, according to all reports, and sent him to the Steelers because that's where Justin felt like he could, break out and really carve out a lane for himself. I think Ryan Poles was enamored with Caleb Williams. I think it resets the, have to win it resets the clock of like timeline in which you can win a Super Bowl. I have already said I think that's insanely overrated. And you have to win a Super Bowl while your QB's on their rookie contract. That worked out so well for Joe Burrow Super Bowl. Oh wait, he doesn't have one. That worked out so great for Jalen Hurts Super Bowl. Oh, he also doesn't have one. That worked out great for Dak Prescott. He's never made a conference finals. Justin Herbert, he has one. He doesn't have a single playoff win. So yeah, it worked out great for all those guys, and that team building around them before they got paid. I think it's overrated, but I get it, right? Like it makes sense in terms of team building. You have to give yourself the chance.
In theory, it's great.
In theory, makes sense. Totally get that. I think that my problem is like I can separate it being a good move for the Bears and like Justin's career being over. I think my problem is that people don't separate the two. Like I think it was a good move for the Bears, and I also think Justin can be saved and can be salvaged. I have a problem when people are like, "Yeah, Justin stinks." Like I think that's crazy to me. I think we've talked about situation all year. I mean, all podcasts, right? And so, like, when we look at the Justin Fields Bear situation, I think they totally failed him, especially up until that final year. But like, if we look at the first year, he started week 3 of the 2021 season because they had to start Andy Dalton. They just had to because
crazy.
QB1, whatever the fuck. Andy Dalton goes down. Justin Fields starts against, I want to say the Browns, gets absolutely demolished in his first start. Matt Nagy stays the course all season in the offense not being built around Justin Fields, does not pivot. I guess they built their offense for Andy Dalton, and they had Justin Fields running an Andy Dalton offense his rookie year, which is very crucial to the development of quarterbacks. And then, not to mention, not just poor coaching, his supporting cast was Darnell Mooney, Allen Robinson, who was cooked back then, and then Jason Peters, Jermaine Ifedi, his offensive line was horrible. And that was his rookie year. Absolutely destroyed. He had no chance to succeed. You put any quarterback in that, they're not succeeding. I'm sorry. Entering 2022, the Bears fire Matt Nagy, bring in Ryan Poles, and they try and improve the roster. Cole Kmet led the team in targets. Say what you want about Cole Kmet. They had Darnell Mooney, Dante Pettis, Equinemius St. Brown, Velus Jones. They traded a second-round pick for Chase Claypool, who ended up being a bust. And the offensive line was horrible again. So we have, this is now 2 years. We've had a horrible offensive line both years. We've had no reasonable targets both years. And then we go into year 3 and we get DJ Moore. Okay, DJ Moore has the best season of his career. Let's make that clear. The Bears win 7 games. Justin missed 4 of them. And there were at least 2 or 3 that like the defense just absolutely shit the bed and they came back and all that shit happened. Cool. The Bears could have been a 10-win team last year. They could have been a 9-win team last year, whatever. And that's with Justin missing 4.5 games. Like, he plays the full season, they probably win 9 or 10 games. But whatever, cool, whatever. He's horrible, I guess. And then people say he can't develop as a passer. I mean, listen, bro. I think that the predictive analytics stats, they do tell a story. I think that the situation is very important. Justin has been a turnover machine. That is totally his fault. Way too loose with the ball. He has the most fumbles of any player in the league since coming into it. His passing stats have also been actually really bad. 27th in EPA per pass play, 28th out of 29th in success rate. Like, he just hasn't been a great passer. I do think that he can be salvaged. I think he can be saved. He can do things that no other quarterback in the world can do. And like, that alone is reason enough to be a starter next year. Like, for no team, and granted, teams are saying like, oh, we think he has the same amount of chance to succeed as Sam Darnold and Drew Lock. Okay. Justin Fields can do things that there's nothing that Sam Darnold and Drew Lock can do that no other quarterback in the league can't do. Like, the same cannot be said about Justin Fields. And so that alone gives him, but there's a lot of good throwers in the NFL. There's a lot of good throwers. Kirk Cousins is a good thrower. Kirk Cousins has one playoff win. That doesn't matter. Not that it doesn't matter. That's crazy to say. That's crazy to say. But like, I'm just saying, my problem lies in that people are so quick to write off Justin Fields. Do I think Caleb Williams is a better prospect? Yes. Do I think he will probably have more success? I mean, he fucking better, because every single person has told me that this is the best situation that any QB is walking into. Okay. So the Bears better win 9 or 10 games next year. If the Bears win 7 games and Caleb looks mid and they have 1 or 2 more wins than they did this year, it's a failure, an absolute failure of a year. I'm sorry, it is. Like, you can't have the best you can't tell me Caleb Williams, this generational prospect, who's that's already a leg up, right? Like, he's already supposed to be better than every other QB we've seen for the last couple of years. So his floor should already be higher. And then walking into the Bears, who have the best rookie situation for any QB since Patrick Mahomes, you've now got 2 legs up on everyone else. So if you are not winning 9 or 10 games next year, it's a failure of a year. And you better hope that Justin Fields does not lead the Steelers to any type of success, because I won't let anybody live it down. Yeah, that's the end of my rant. I think Justin Fields can be saved. I think it's crazy to say that he's going to have a horrible career because of a bad first 3 seasons on a franchise that has the only franchise in the league that has never had a 4,000-yard passer. Guess it's Justin's fault, but cool. I think that the Bears are probably going to be in a good position. If they don't, though, you're going to hear it out of me. And I think Justin is going to be good. And so, yeah, that's the end of my TED Talk.
Yeah, I kind of I worry about some of the throwing when it comes to Justin Fields a little bit, just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
I don't know, man. We'll have to see what it's gonna look like. But I just don't know if he's gonna be able to be actual a consistent thrower, be able to put it where he wants to. I feel like when you don't have that control, it's a little bit more difficult to make some of the throws that you should make, whether it's anticipating or being able to really drive throws or throw over the middle of the field and really process and have that type of timing. And I just don't know what he has to fix. I feel like it's really difficult to fix. So
I think that's a good way to say that.
Yeah.
And I think he can be fixed. So, I mean, time will tell, bro. I think him going to the Steelers with Mike Tomlin and, say what you want about Russ. I do think if he does sit behind him for a year, it'll do us some good. I don't think that he should sit behind him for a year. I think he'll start by week 7, like I said. But
I hope he has to sit behind him for a year. I actually hope that. But I don't know if Russ is capable of that.
I just want to make it clear, in Christy's bracket, she picked Gonzaga to win. And in order to not interrupt the podcast, she wrote me a note that says Gonzaga rules because they're currently up by a lot of points.
That's funny.
Oh, yeah, they won. So, and so,
wow.
that's that's our Justin Fields debate. She's a winner. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the pod. We talked about a lot of NFL stuff. I feel like me and Khalil all the time agree, but I feel like we disagreed a little bit on this one. So it was good to, talk a little bit,
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the pod. Make sure you subscribe to Run It Up Podcast. All the good stuff will be in the descriptions. Leave a 5-star rating and review. Follow us on Twitter at the Run It Up Pod. Follow us on TikTok at the Run It Up Podcast. You can find me on Twitter at Najee _, Khalil on Twitter at Balil44, and Justice on Twitter at JReed_. I hope you guys have a litty day, a litty night, a litty life. And just like we do in every episode of this podcast, make sure y'all go run it up.